Hello. We're continuing in Ezra today. We're in chapters 4, 5, and 6. If you remember from yesterday, the temple foundations have been laid. And now once those foundations are laid, the people in the neighborhood don't really like it. And you see chapter 4, they decide they're going to write a letter to King Artaxerxes, and they're going to say these Jews are troublemakers, they're problematic, they don't pay their taxes, and you ought to stop it. And he writes back and he says, good idea, we'll stop it. And so they go and they stop it. And you find at the end of chapter 4 that the work had stopped. In chapter 5, we're introduced to Haggai and Zechariah. And those are the two prophets from the book of those two books by those names, Haggai and Zechariah in the Old Testament. And they came and they prophesied to this remnant that returned from Babylonian captivity. And basically they're saying, get out and build that temple again. They let it sit there for a long time. And then you see the name Zerubbabel that we only saw mentioned earlier on, but Zerubbabel takes charge. He is the leader of them, and he gets the work going again. Same guys in the neighborhood don't like it, so they send another letter, and they send it this time to King Darius. And they say an interesting thing in there. They say, go check your annals. Go check the records of everything. You're going to see how much troublemaker these are. Darius does. He goes and he looks. And in chapter 6, we get the response from Darius, which is very interesting. And clearly God's hand is in the middle of this. Darius looks at him and he says, I did go look and I saw where one of my predecessors said this is a good idea and we should actually do it. And he said, I support it. I want to reestablish the worship of Yahweh in the temple in Jerusalem. I'm going to fund its building. I'm going to allow the people to go back, and I'm going to send back all the goods that were taken from the temple. And we're going to see a listing of that in a little while. Not only that, he says an interesting way. He says, stay away from them. Do not interfere. He then says, let the governor of the Jews and the Jewish elders rebuild the house of God on its site. And then later on, he says, we're going to rebuild it from the royal treasury, from the revenues of you guys. Basically, he's saying, your taxes are going to fund that rebuilding. So not only does he deny their request, he tells them to leave them alone and pay their taxes and give those taxes to them so that they can build this temple. And then we see the temple is completed, and there's this big celebration, and that celebration happens to be at the, it says here in verse 15, the temple was completed on the third day of the month of Adar. I love the use of third days all the time. They just show up all over the place. It's completed on the third day of the month of Adar in the 6th year of the reign of King Darius. And it talks about them having a Passover celebration, and they saw all the priests were ceremonially clean. What that means is they're wearing their white robes and they were baptized. Go back and look in Leviticus if you want to see how what those rules are. And we see that the ending of chapter 6 is the Feast of Unleavened Bread, and that is the 7-day feast that immediately follows the 1-day Passover. So anyway, the Lord's temple has now been rebuilt. This is what's referred to as the second temple. Later on, it's going to be remodeled by Herod the Great, and it's called Herod's temple. So if you ever are reading commentaries and things like that, and you hear the phrase second temple period, that is the time from this roughly 500 BC through to the destruction of the temple in AD 70. That's called the second temple period. And later on, it's referred to as Herod's temple. I hope you enjoy it. It's a great reading, and we'll pick up more tomorrow with the introduction of Ezra himself. Have a good evening.